So I'll start. Good evening. We're here having our what I would call the Lion's Gate ceremony, although we're commemorating when the sun hits 15 degrees Leo. It's also known as Lunisad and Lammas, and different names depending on what tradition you come from. And Barbara agreed to sing a song for us this evening to start, which thank you, Barbara.
Grandmothers, grandmothers, and holy ancestors, thank you for this harvest. Thank you for the gardeners and farmers that tend the crops and the soil. Grandmothers, grandmothers, thank you for the bright sun and soft rain and all the food that makes us strong so we can fulfill our purpose here. Grandmothers, grandmothers, thank you for all the winds, the strong winds that blow away what we don't need, the soft winds so that we can dance. Grandmothers, grandmothers, thank you for the moon and stars that glow at night to tell us the time. Grandmothers, grandmothers, thank you for all your help to those on earth. And now for the beautiful harvest. Grandmothers, grandmothers.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. I love it. I love when you sing about the grandmothers.
Thank you.
Okay, let me check something and then wait. Oh, I can't do that. Okay. I thought I could share my screen and like start it and then share my screen, but I have to do it the old-fashioned way. I'll just do it the way we know how to do it. Okay, this is exciting. I love, well, I really love first harvest. I guess I like all the seasons of the year, but it's exciting when you start to see things coming to fruition, especially in the garden for me. Here in Sedona, we have, what I've noticed this week, there's kind of a second batch of strawberries. I mentioned that last week, but I still have the second batch of strawberries and peaches. There's a peach tree we planted last year, I think, and it's already got a lot of peaches, which is exciting. And that's actually the peach tree in the soul garden. I planted it with my soul garden prayer intention last year. So I was happy to see the peaches and a few tomatoes and basil and blackberries. I mean, the wild blackberries are also coming to fruition right now. So that's exciting. So I definitely feel the energy. I made a ceremonial shake at lunch with half of each. So that's what I could do for now. Anyway, so I really did ask myself, like, why do I believe in this, or why is this, why do I think this is important? And I do think that attuning to the solar year, the seasons and the cycles of the earth, because it's really the earth that we're experiencing, right? The sun doesn't change particularly, the sun's moving and revolving, but it's not it's not changing like the seasons are, right? Like the earth is. But attuning to the timing does put you in harmony with the earth and nature. And it does seem to bring, at least I found, it brings me greater joy, balance, abundance. I think a deeper sense of meaning with the way time, I don't know, I just know that it brings me a deeper sense of meaning. I'm not even sure if I can elaborate on what that is, but a deeper sense of spiritual connection. I do also think there's psychological and spiritual healing, and maybe physical and mental as well, as you reconnect and deepen your relationship with the cosmic order, you know, with Mother Earth in particular, right? We're so dependent on Mother Earth and for our livelihood. And, you know, that really, I mean, maybe that includes the whole universe, whole solar system, but definitely Earth, you know, sun and moon are really important for our livelihood, like for regulating the seasons and, you know, giving us life and light. And then the energy of matter, you know, is spiral. Actually, when you run energy, I've been learning, you know, as I've been practicing energy healing, energy runs in a spiral, just in some ways the same way we picture the season as circular, but also moving forward in time. Energy runs in a spiral as well. And so I think, you know, pretty much everything runs in a, you know, like a spiral form. And in you know, at least natural things, you know, as humans, we have a rhythm and a cycle too. And I think I do believe this. I don't necessarily say I have evidence for it, but attuning to the part to any to attuning to the solar rhythm does bring us back to balance and healing. As we, right, as I mean, one of the things that I think is beautiful about both the moon cycle and the solar cycle, attuning to both of those, is that balance, right? If we're doing the steps of the process, right, we're, you know, there is a time for sowing the seeds, and there's a time for the harvest, and a time for rest, and a time for play. And I think, you know, a time for work, and a time for mental work, and a time for, you know, prayer work. And so I think that does bring us a sense of healing and wholeness. I also believe that this ceremony brings orientation to the soul, because you can look to nature. I mean, we all have our own processes and our own astrological charts and our own timing, but there's one aspect, right? We're all kind of grounded, right, with the earth cycles, and it does bring you a sense of where you are in the transformative and regenerative process, or in those cycles. Right, there's some element, right? You and I, you know, we both live on the same earth. So we're partaking in the same energy, even if it doesn't, right, even if it seems like we're disconnected. And then I think gratitude is a gift in itself. Ceremonializing and celebrating and being in gratitude for the abundance of our lives, abundance of the earth, is kind of a gift. It's a kind of a benefit in itself. To have that gratitude, and you express that so beautifully in your song, Barbara. So I've probably gone over this with you before, but so the soul cycle that I've drawn on the right is really, I guess I would say, a synthesis of, you know, studying the agricultural cycle through gardening, astrology, and, you know, looking at mythology and historical traditions or spiritual traditions throughout history and through different cultures that, you know, that still recognize the lunar-solar cycles. I mean, Christianity, or, you know, Catholicism at least, was still tied. You know, if you go to a Catholic church, you're still tied to an Episcopal church, you're still tied to the liturgy that's cyclic, you know, that's on a solar calendar, and a lunisolar calendar too, if you think of Easter. But most of the holidays are solar now. So it's, I mean, I know there are some spiritual traditions that aren't connected to these rhythms, but it seems like part of the fabric of our nature to be connected to the earth and the rhythms and the cycles, the sun and the moon on a spiritual level. So it's like I get, okay, Christian Science has I was raised a Christian Scientist, and it has a 2-year calendar, but I don't remember, there was no, Christian Science is a iconoclastic tradition, so there was a reader that read the Bible and a reader that read Science and Health. There was no rituals, there was no communion, there was no, and there wasn't, maybe there was a reading on Easter, but it really wasn't connected to the earth cycles the way you can really feel it still, I think, in the Catholic Church, because it's still kind of, so it has so much of that, when the Catholic Church was formed, and I guess, if you want to say appropriated or used the rituals of the earth, the Romans and the earth-based traditions, that's still all in Catholicism. Anyway, I'll stop
Well,
there.
I feel
Yeah,
like
go ahead.
a lot of people are going back to that, like the witch stuff, the druid stuff, Celtic
Yeah,
shamanism, again, uh, the connection with the earth, connection with the cycles of life on earth. And that's what that's what everyone celebrates to start with. That's,
right.
all of our ancestors used to celebrate that stuff if you go back far enough. So, yeah, but I think a lot of people are coming back to that because they're feeling that that need to be connected,
Yeah,
and now with all our technology, we're so disconnected in so many ways that we all want to walk barefoot.
right,
We
right. Yeah,
don't.
I think you're right, and I'm glad for this. I don't know, this is a long time ago. After I got divorced, I had this boyfriend, and I kept telling him, like, people are longing for spiritual connection. You know what I mean? Like, for many people, religion has failed them, or, something didn't connect right with them. And I truly think that's, they don't put, in a materialistic world, like when you're in sales or marketing, it's not like one of the things that's, right. It's always about happy, is it going to save you money or make you money or happiness or whatever. But
Yeah.
so I'm trying to, figure out, for me, for business, I'm trying to figure out how to quantify that spiritual connection, but truly underneath the materialism and desires and our fears of scarcity and all that stuff, I think we really long to be connected to the earth, to one another, to God. We long to be at one with, and this work is about that, right? The creating that oneness and that feeling of being connected. And so, yeah, I think that's one reason why people are going, right? They're looking
Yes.
for shamanism, or they're looking for anything that helps bring that feeling back of that oneness. Yeah. So that's exciting. So,
Yes, I do
yeah,
feel like people are coming back to more earth based. Yeah.
yeah, I think so. And I'm glad for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so tomorrow is tomorrow's actually 15 degrees of Leo, which some people call the Lion's Gate. I've seen a lot of things, like, I don't know if you see these things on Facebook, or I don't know, like, over the last few years, this idea of the Lion's Gate got really popular because I don't know if it was last year or the year before. The lion, this gate of power of 15 degrees Leo was on the 8th of August. So people are really into the 8/8, but it doesn't fall on that, because we just had a leap year. It's now on the
Oh.
6th of August. So it's just funny because well, I don't know. I mean, everybody, okay, and there's probably some sacred geometry here, but it's 8/8, this year it's going to be 8/8/8. So it's going to be August 8th of 2024, which adds an 8. So numerologically, it's 8/8/8. So I always see all these things about, this Lionsgate portal and manifesting and stuff like that, but I don't really know. I just know that that's gaining popularity, but I don't exactly know what it's tied to. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure
Like
what,
why?
how, right, exactly how it brings you this abundance, but
How this is all supposed to be working.
yeah, exactly. So anyway, so there, as you know, there's 4 gates of power in the year. They're in the 4 fixed signs. There's 8 solar holidays total, the solstices, the equinoxes, and then in the midpoint of the solstice and equinoxes, we celebrate the solar holidays, the cross quarter holidays, excuse me, which would be Beltane, and now we have Lammas or Lughnasadh, first harvest, and then we have Samhain at Halloween around that time of year, and then Imbolc, which happens in February. And one of the things that I've enjoyed studying through mythology and is that, well, okay, I think I guess I find interesting, one of the mysteries of this holiday is that it's generally grain gods and goddesses who preside over these thresholds, these gates. These are liminal deities, right? Limin means thresholds, and generally, and liminal deities also have a connection to the underworld or being able to go in and out of the underworld. So, for example, Persephone and Demeter and Hades, right? Hades lives in the underworld and he abducted Persephone, and Demeter's looking for her, right? These are all liminal deities that are having interaction of going in and out of the underworld. So I believe these thresholds, and maybe it's something I would love to study if I had extra time. These thresholds are perhaps gateways. Yeah, I do think, they're called gates of power. These are thresholds between maybe the underworld and the outer world, or what we consider the underworld, or these gateways between worlds where, there's an influx of energy or there's an opportunity for a shift. So I think it's interesting how these, right, the mysteries are connected to these liminal deities. And so, and they're generally related to, earth and grain and, relationship of, maybe Mother Earth and Father Sky, or, some kind of sexuality, right, between, a sexual union between a feminine deity and a masculine deity. So it's interesting stuff, I think.
Yeah.
And in the Druidic tradition, this is one that's still well known. People still celebrate it. This holiday commemorates the first harvest of the grain and the fruits. So I would say if you're in Northern Europe, maybe, I heard in some cases they're harvesting corn, but like for here, way too early. I don't know if you guys are, I'm like, my corn is not nearly ready to be harvested.
There is some corn here.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I guess it's warmer, so they could start sooner. So there is corn being harvested, but no wheat or the other. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
And corn is so interesting how it's a grain that's like turned into a vegetable, but you can still dry it and grind it, and it's still a grain. Corn is just fascinating.
Corn is interesting. And what my mother-in-law told me, which I found interesting too, I didn't know this, corn has to be corn doesn't, I don't know if I'm getting this right, but corn doesn't really exist in nature on its own. It has to be human planted. It has to have the human, somehow corn is, it is like a grain, like a grass, but it has to be human seeded. So there's a relationship of corn and humans that's like symbiotic or codependent.
Yes. That corn, the way what we know as corn now doesn't grow wild anymore.
It doesn't grow wild. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a grain that has been and that's why like there's all these arguments about, modification of the fruits and vegetables and stuff, and no one wants to eat anything that's been modified, but so much of it has been by humans, right? So
Uh-huh.
over millennium, humans have developed corn as we know it. And yeah, it does not exist in the wild the
Doesn't
way
exist in the wild. Yeah, it's so interesting.
we know it. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I know on Hopi, I get the information from their Facebook.
Oh,
I
cool. Oh, I
think
should look at
they
that.
pollinate it by
Yeah.
hand.
Yeah,
I
wow.
think they actually, yeah, it's very interesting. I'll have to send you her information sometime because you're close enough to go to some of their things and see what they're doing, and it's fascinating.
Yeah,
I
wow.
got I I planted the tree in the yard at the little house where I was, but I
Mhm.
got a small peach tree from when I went to visit
Oh,
um,
neat.
the reservation. They were doing a workshop on seed planting.
Wow,
Anyway, it's
that's
just
cool.
it's amazing. And have I told you this before? We were there and she's talking about planting and all this stuff, and then she starts talking about biodynamics and Rudolf Steiner.
Oh my gosh.
It makes me like I can't even. I was in shock. They used the liquid extra juice, whatever they call it. I don't remember now. That biodynamics. They
Yeah.
know someone formulates it, and they use that.
Oh,
So
wow,
there's
that's so cool.
incredible meeting of the old traditions and biodynamics. I mean, I never thought in a million years I would hear Rudolf Steiner's name on the Hopi reservation, you
Yeah,
know?
that's so interesting.
So
Yeah.
anyway, it's very cool. But yeah, that is true. I do know that about corn. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's I never really, yeah,
I
processed
just
this.
think it's interesting. I mean, I guess what I mean, it's a sustenance, and like you said, it's a grain and it's a vegetable, and
Yeah.
it's also fascinating. I mean, the one thing that hit me when she told, grains, I mean, a lot of the grasses, a lot of the grains, right, are different than what grows in the wild. I've been noticing the grasses around here. We have a lot of grasses with little seeds that probably could be eaten.
Yeah.
But we're really, humanity, I mean, maybe this is obvious, ever since the agricultural revolution, we're really dependent on these grasses, right? We have such a important relationship with all of any of the grains, depending on what culture you're from, right? If maybe you're corn, if you're from the US, or maybe you're into wheat, or you know barley if you're from Tibet, or whatever, quinoa if you're in South America. It's amazing to me how our history and our abundance is tied to grain. Our interdependence on the earth is so tied to grain. And so, yeah, so I think this is an exciting holiday. Just,
Yeah.
I grew grain this year. I seeded it around, I usually seed it in the moon and Pisces after Imbolc, because the purple karma barley I grow can withstand the cold. It's frost tolerant. So
Nice.
you grow it, right? It's used to being in colder temperatures, I think. So it usually, when did it come out? It was actually out in Gemini. So it was in May. I mean, I harvested it quite a while. I mean, it was before the summer solstice that I harvested it.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know, but I saved it. I don't like, well, I'm kind of doing I don't know what to, I don't know if I should cook it, or maybe this is the moment to like do something with it. Yeah.
Oh, there you
Yeah.
go.
Make a meal from it or something. Because I saved some of the seeds for next, I'm doing some seed
Right.
saving, and also then I have this big pile of purple karma barley too.
Nice.
Yeah. So Lunazad is named after, in the Druidic tradition, Lunazad is named after the god Lug, who is the sacrificial grain god. I think in the more, they have it now, current Celtic and Druid followers, call it like John Barleycorn, and there's more modernized names, but Lug was the maybe the god that, procreated with Mother Earth for the grain harvest. And so at this, the themes of this celebration, I guess, are gratitude for your abundance and for for grain, but also for fruits, anything that's growing in the garden. Also sacrifice so the higher purpose can be achieved. And mourning, as you and I both probably sensitive to, mourning the death of both the grain god, right? Because he gives his life for so we can eat. And also right, there's also kind of a sadness as we feel the shift, right? We're 6 weeks away from summer solstice, and we feel that shift, right? All of a sudden the days are dark, morning is not as bright, and the sun is going down earlier. It's like, we getting the hints that summer is over or ending. Maybe summer's not over, but it's ending.
Yes.
Yeah. And so there is a kind of a sadness, I think, in this, a sadness and mourning in this particular festival. And then it's also a time for cutting away, like that would be decision and discernment, right? Like knowing, figuring out what's wheat and what's chaff for yourself. So I think that, symbolically, literally and symbolically, I guess. So I found this passage. I read this this is a good website, which has a nice write-up about Lunazad, but I'll just read this because it's nicely written. Lunazad marks the beginning of the noticeable descent of the sun into the darkness of winter. From the connection between the earth, female principle, and the sun, male principle, the marriage of sky father, sun god, and earth mother, we celebrated at Beltane, emerged the fruits of the first harvest of the year. Lunasad is a time of joy about the first fruits. It's also a time of tension because the dark days of winter are coming nearer, and most of the harvest is not brought in and stored away yet. The god of the harvest is the green man, also known as John Barleycorn. He sacrifices himself every year in order to enable human life on earth. In some areas, his death is mourned with wreaths decorated with poppies or cornflowers. The grain is cut. Part of it goes into bread and nutrition. Another part is stored away and used as seeds next spring to create new life. Looking at that, thoughts about sacrifice, transformation, death, and rebirth are also a part of Lunazad. And so I think that's an interesting concept. Something I'll bring it back in at the end here, or near the end, is this idea of the seeds, right? Like I was saying, some of what I grew for the barley I might keep and eat, and some of it's stored away for next year, because what we get at the harvest is both, right, nutrition, but you also want to have the seeds for whatever you're going to grow next year and for the future or future years even. So that's, on a soul level, I find that very fascinating, right? Like what's coming to fruition now that's going to be, right, that's sustaining you now, but also what's coming to fruition that's something that you're going to build upon and grow, right? Right, your seeds represent, right, the potential, the future potential of growth too, of subsequent years. So not only is it just this, right, this harvest doesn't represent just this year, it represents the fertility and abundance of future year, or the abundance and potential of future years.
Right.
So in the West, we have, I know that they go further back. I know that the Syrians, the Syrians, the Sumerians, the Mesopotamians, they had these grain. I kind of just stuck to the ones I was more familiar with, but in the West, we, again, these grain ceremonies are really tied to, the agricultural revolution or whatever, tied to grain, when we started producing, historically speaking, when we started producing grain, as an agricultural civilization. So in Egypt, okay, the ones I'm talking about here are all related to August. So in Egypt, in early August, they would have, and it could be in late July or early August, depending on the precession of the equinoxes, the heliacal rise of Sirius, the star Sirius, it rises in the, let's see, evening. Is it the morning? Mornings is, oh, you guys see it right at sunrise, I guess. But Sirius moves into position. The star Sirius has been in conjunction with the sun for the last like month, and now it's moving such that you can see it. And to the Egyptians, that signified when Sirius would rise and you could start seeing it in the morning sky, it would signify the flooding of the Nile, called the inundation. And that's when the Egyptians would have their big festival. The Egyptians had 12 30-day months. So all their months were equal length. They were 30 days. And then they had 5 feast days of the inundation, where it was kind of like considered outside of time. So whenever the flood would happen, whenever this heliacal rise, that's when they would go to the temple and do the, I guess it was similar in the sense, maybe it wasn't a harvest time, but it was a time of fertility, because the flooding of the Nile is what makes the banks so fertile. The Nile floods every year, or it used to, and makes there's these green belts along the Nile where the flooding happens, and then they have, so it was related to the same concepts of food abundance and the fertility of the earth. And so the Greek, and Sirius the star Sirius is related to Isis on one hand, and these are again liminal deities, Isis and Osiris, because because they were a couple, but also in the sky, Sirius is right next to Orion, and Orion was into the Egyptians, the constellation of Orion was Osiris. And then there's the dog, Sirius is the dog star, but there's also like Canis Major, Minor, I can't remember which one. Like there's this Anubis figure, next to Orion, there's this Anubis figure, and Sirius is part of that group of stars in the sky. In the Greek, we've talked about the Greek mysteries. Again, that was with Demeter and Persephone, Hades. So I think they happened at different times of year because of the climate. Their harvest festivals were, tied with these liminal deities. I don't know how. Those are the ones that don't have to do with August necessarily, but similar to the Greeks, the Romans had Ceres, which we get the word cereal from, and create. She was kind of the central goddess figure of the grain ceremonies. I mean, when I've read about it, in Greece, they had this elaborate story, you read it in the hymn to Demeter, of Persephone and Hades and Demeter. The Romans had more like Ceres focused about the grain. I don't think, well, at least in my perception of it from what I've read, not so much focused on like Ceres, Proserpina and Pluto or whatever would be the Hades god. Still a liminal deity, but not so much this complex story. I don't know. Anyway, so the Druid and Celtic traditions still celebrate Lughnasadh, first harvest, on August 1st. Just because their holidays are kind of like May 1st and August 1st, and to mark the years. I think that's a remnant of the precession of the equinoxes has to do with the skies shifting, the way the sky shifts over time. So it's like 1 degree every 75 years or something like that. So it shifted, enough that it's now, a couple days different. The Wiccans also celebrate Lughnasadh or Lammas. Comes from Loaf Mass. It's just one of the 8 solar holidays, or sabbats. Similar, you'd bake bread and do other rituals centered around celebrating the harvest. The Christians have a loaf Mass too, a Lammas, and it's includes the ceremonial consecration of the loaves after the harvest of the grain. So you would gather your grain, you would do whatever, separate the wheat from the chaff, you grind it, you'd make your bread, and then you would bring your loaf for being consecrated and blessed at the church. And that was, I think the same date, like right at the beginning of the month of August. And then I read there's also an Ascension of Mary on August 15th, where you bring in like herbs and stuff to be, the Ascension of Mary is also kind of recognized as a harvest festival, where you would bring in herbs to be blessed and other garden things, not so much grain, but I thought that was interesting. Anyways, so I mean, I'm sure, from doing Waldorf teaching, right? Right, you bake bread and you honor the bread, and right, like, so there's a lot of ways to honor and attune to this season, to attune to the energy and kind of get in attunement to the first harvest. For me, I'm gathering fruits and grains from the harvest. I was like, I'm gonna prepare my special meal with my peach, but I might do something more for the family now that I'm realizing I have all these other things. And then I think on the soul level, there's definitely stuff to acknowledge the earth's abundance, and especially through the garden. But then I think there's also psychological and spiritual element to this, which I was saying about the wheat and the chaff, like, the wheat are seeds, when you right, those are little seeds. When you separate the wheat from the chaff, you're getting the little seeds, and they're nutrient dense. They have a lot of potential in them and a lot of like power stored up in the little seed. And so the chaff, okay, here on the right is a picture of the barley, some of that purple karma barley. And the chaff at one time protected, right now it's still in its form with the chaff, but as it's growing, the chaff is what protects the seeds as they're growing. And so like I say, on a psychological level, if you're considering delving into like the wheat and the chaff right now, like what behaviors or programs, or we all have those things that protected us along the way, but that as we think about the potential, right, of what we're creating in our lives now, the harvest of what we're harvesting now or what we're trying to create in the future, that chaff no longer serves us anymore, right? And so if we so we do want to separate the wheat from the chaff, and I would say compost the chaff, you know what I mean? So that's nutrients for the future. And, I do take time at this time of year to reflect on, like I say, what's coming in, like what I see, the growth that I've seen over the solar year. Because, well, right, this is first harvest. In the Wiccan tradition, there's 3 harvests. There's this one, the first fruits and the grains. And then there's the one at the autumnal equinox, which would be like orchard fruits and, all the rest of the fruits, right? Like apples and all those, ones. And then, pomegranates and whatever you get, there's such an influx in the fall. And then the third harvest is the meat harvest that happens around Halloween, right? To be prepared for the winter. So where I was going with that is what I've seen over studying this over the years is there is multiple harvests that come in there. The energy is building, right? This is just the beginning, right? We're looking at the energy and it continues to build and change and come more to fruition over the next 3 months, right? We're starting a 3-month cycle right now as the energy of 2024 comes to fruition. And by the third harvest, again, this is my observation and opinion, but the energy comes to full fruition by then. And then that last 6 weeks of the, that we consider the solar year between, well, it's about 6 weeks between Halloween, let's say, and Christmas, is really about the energy is right. It gets really dark then. It's a celebratory time. We're having family, it's Sagittarian time. It's time to celebrate and be social, but it's also a time where the energy is waning and going out for the year, right? So this next 3 months is really, we see the perfection, if you will, or the fruition of the energy for the whole year coming to fruition, coming to culmination. Yeah. And it doesn't just, right, it's not just today, right? This is over, let's say, like I say, 12 weeks of unfolding, right? We're kind of commemorating this, like I say, gateway or threshold as we move into this period where things are coming to fruition for the year. And I guess I would say that's part of that balance, like doing the harvesting, taking it all in, and then doing the releasing part and getting ready for next year. So I think I said this before, but what are the nutrients? What are the nutrients? I always like to think of them in 3 parts, but so I'll tell you my 3 parts. What are the seeds that you've taken in or fruits that are for now? What are the ones that you're taking in that are for winter, to get you through the winter? And what are the ones that are stored for the future for either planning next year or in future years? I think those are the, and then letting go of that. Okay, so I'll just go back to the chat for a second. It seems to me by this time of the year, there's a couple themes, right, of what I'm working on this year, but as we grow to this point of the year, it becomes pretty obvious to me, like what areas where I'm stuck or what areas, you know what I mean? Like usually something comes up that it's like, oh, that's an area where I need to change or to let go of, right? And so definitely by now, right? Usually in the early part of the year, I'm totally blind to it, but kind of around, I noticed this year, it was more around summer solstice when it started to become really clear to me. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, right?
Well, you're not ready for it. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like when I'm ready to hear it, then I can hear it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
When I'm ready to do something about it, then I can hear. I don't know.
Yeah. But I also think we put energy, I mean, with the gardening metaphor, right? We put energy in, right? We've put energy into cultivating our gardens, right? We've planted the seeds and we've watered them and fertilized them and nurtured them and tended to them and cultivated them. And so, like I say, this is at least in my garden, what I've noticed is like, as I've been putting all this energy into the garden, there's also all this stuff that's come up that I didn't plant there, right?
Yes.
I didn't think I planted there. And some of it's stuff I want to keep, right? Like I had in one of the areas of tomatoes, I had some tomatoes reseed themselves from last year. They're growing a little more slowly, but they're still growing, that's exciting. But then there's also stuff that I might say is weeds, but I'm really working on changing my perception of weeds to being like, okay, I didn't plant that, but I can cut it down, add it to the right. Basically, we just like cut things back and put them back down in the garden bed as nutrients and also as mulch. Yeah. And so, I'm trying to think, on a psychological level, rather than feeling bad about these weeds, right? When you think of weeds, it's like this noxious thing, you gotta get rid of it. But like maybe those things are helping, right? And those things are like the chaff, right? Those things that had a role to play, have a role to play for us. And
yes.
So I'm shifting my thinking to being like, okay, maybe it isn't desirable any longer, or I don't need it anymore, like the chaff, but it played a positive role at some point, in my psyche or whatever. It played a role. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, rather than blame myself, right? Because it used to be like, I gotta get rid
Yeah.
of this stuff because I'm not good enough. And as I've been moving towards like, well, what if I am good enough and it's right? And like seeing the
Yes.
world like, okay, these things are there. What are they showing me? You know what I mean? Right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So let me see it. Okay, I think it's we can pray with this on or pray with it. I can stop sharing for a second. Anyway, so I don't know. That wasn't a very wrapped up last slide, but
Oh, it's good.
yeah, I'll pray now. Well, is there anything that you'd like to pray for tonight?
Just helping me on this journey of getting rid of some of this extra weight I've been carrying, which I don't need,
Okay.
and getting stronger, yeah, and healthier.
Okay. Okay. Very nice. Okay. Okay. Sounds good. And I'll do a 3-round prayer tonight, just so you know, it's part of the ceremony. Grandmother Earth, Grandfather Sky, power of the 4 directions, all of our ancestors, we send a voice. Grandmother, Grandfather, thank you for the harvest and the abundance. Please help us on our transformative journeys as we grow and change and release what no longer serves us. Give us peace in our hearts with the journey, with the process, with the changes we are making, and with all the beauty and joy that is available to us. Help us to be warriors of the light and fight for our innocence and for our health and for the light. Grandmother, grandfather, we're all, I guess, always in the midst of change and growth. But Barbara and I are really working on being deliberate about our actions, about our bodies, our minds, our emotions, and spirit. Please help us hunt and gather the energy that we need. Help us discern what is right for us and what is excess and could be let go, or maybe help us let go. And please bless us as we move forward and help it make it a little easier and a little lighter. Thank you, God, Great Spirit. Thank you for your love. Thank you for bringing us together. Thank you for the abundance of the harvest. Thank you for the abundance of this year, this solar year, as we are in the time of the sun. Help us hunt and gather the gratitude. Help us hunt and gather the light. Help us hunt and gather the harvest. Help us hunt and gather the wisdom. And also help us hunt and gather the changes. And again, there's a cutting away or a letting go that needs to happen at this time also for our continual renewal and transformation. We take a vow, God, Great Spirit, to keep going on this journey, which is a cyclical pattern of growth and letting go and growth and letting go. Grandmother Earth, Grandfather Sky, please help and bless Barbara and I on our journeys. Please bless us and bless whomever may see this video later. Help us as we change and we grow, God, Great Spirit. Help support us in this process. We are at peace with the choices we've made. We are at peace with the healing that we are seeking. We are at peace in our hearts with knowing the change, that we want change, and that maybe change is necessary. Help us to continue to fight and be innocent, and to seek that health and light in our bodies. Grandmother Earth, Grandfather Sky, we are both growing and seeking the growth and seeking the light, seeking more ease, seeking more comfort, seeking more lightness in our body, and asking for help on this journey, God, Great Spirit, asking for relief from pain and suffering, relief from headaches, relief from other pain in our bodies. Please help bring us that light and help support us in the changes that we are making. Grandmother, grandfather, thank you so much for your support and your love. Thank you for coming in and wrapping your light around us and blessing us. Thank you for the energy of this harvest. Thank you, God, Great Spirit. Help us hunt and gather again that gratitude, that light. Help us hunt and gather the lightness of being. Help us hunt and gather all that nourishes us and fills us up on every level, body, mind, emotions, and spirit. And then help us release anything that is darkness or shadow, or transmute that darkness into shadow, into light, so that we are lighter and easier and freer. Grandmother, grandfather, we take a vow to transmute any darkness we have, any heaviness we have, into light, so that we are lighter and have more ease and have more comfort. Grandmother, grandfather, please bless Barbara and I on our paths. Help us hunt and gather the light from this harvest festival, this harvest time, this midpoint of Leo. We are at peace with this journey. We are at peace with the transformation. We are at peace with being at this gateway, this threshold tonight. We will fight to be warriors of the light, to bring in more light, to give more light. And we ask for your help, God, Great Spirit, to help us in our journey, help make it easier on us, so that we can make the changes that we are seeking in comfort and ease and abundance, so that we can feel better and have more light for ourselves, but also to share with others, so that we can give more light and so that we can be more light. Thank you. Thank you, God, Great Spirit. Thank you for this beautiful harvest. Thank you for this beautiful evening. Thank you for Barbara's beautiful singing. Please help us to continue to hunt and gather energy as we go. Help us hunt and gather self-love as we go. Help us hunt and gather increased comfort and increased ease, so that we feel good in our bodies and can bring so much light to the people around us, into our lives, and into the world. We take a vow, God, Great Spirit, to continue to cultivate this light for the sake of the children and the children's children, until the sun no longer sets and the moon no longer rises. Aho!
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We got this.
We got this. We got this. Yeah. I mean, yes, we got this. Anyway, thank you. Thank you, Barbara.
Good night.
Good night. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
You too.